Fans of Property Brothers didn't see Drew Scott on TV for more than a year and didn't know what was going on.
Something began attacking his body from the inside in 2019.
Doctors did test after test to look for lupus and other brain illnesses. But nothing made sense.
His mind became cloudy. His body was too hot for him. He was too tired to stand on set.
The hardest part?
No one knew what was killing him. It was too late by the time they found the answer. Today, we're going to talk about the illness he kept secret that almost ended his career and the painful truth he hid from millions of people. All of the people in the room who thought the hard part was over thought again when Drew Scott was born.
Vancouver was on April 28, 1978. And Jonathan had just been born to Joanne Scott.
It had been hours since Joanne had last breathed. When the doctor left, he was ready to go about his day. Another beating was felt by a nurse who leaned forward and gave the person a strange look.
Joanne's thoughts stopped.
After that, she made a joke that her first words were rude and couldn't be said again. But Drew remembered her yelling, "Oh, shoo," in shock.
Drew came into the world 4 minutes after Jonathan got there.
In 1978, ultrasounds were only done when something seemed wrong, and the boy's heartbeats lined up so perfectly that not even trained ears could tell.
It wasn't just a big surprise for the Scotts. It changed my life. There are 2 boys instead of 1. 2 worlds changing at the same time.
Their family life began to take shape on a quiet horse farm in Maple Ridge as the shock wore off.
Jim and Joanne moved here from Scotland and built their own house.
The boys learned to love the rhythm of the rough land and never-ending work. In the morning, when they were hauling feed across the yard, the cold got through their jackets. In the afternoons, they rode their horses across wide fields and it seemed like the world went on forever.
Joanne went to karate classes with them and pushed them to be good students.
It was hard for them, but their parents taught them to save money, fix things when they broke, and keep going even when things got tough. They were tough from living on the land before they even knew what the word meant. They learned how to work, try, and get back up. By the time they were 7, Drew and Jonathan were ready to make their own things. That idea turned into Jam Enterprises, a small company whose name comes from John, Andrew, and Mom. They put soft nylon around the hangers and added little rose decorations. Then they went from house to house, selling them with shy smiles and a lot of hope. Their pitch was easy to understand, but their work wasn't. Doors would sometimes slam.
People bought 5 at times.
Then a big order from a wholesaler came in, which made their eyes widen. It felt like magic in the 1980s when the boys made close to $15,000.
Joanne helped them with deliveries and bills, which turned their small hobby into a real business lesson.
They learned that hard work could pay off and that working together was more important than individual skill from their first success. After that, their world quickly changed in a strange and interesting way. They turned into child clowns when they were 8 years old. Jonathan changed into Dimples and Drew changed into Curly. Even though it seems silly, those jobs paid up to $100 an hour. They wore paint on their faces and balanced on props while kids laughed around them at parades and birthday parties. Drew liked the rush and the way it felt to keep everyone's attention. With the money they made, he liked giving candy to his friends as well. Still, the makeup, outfits, and long sets got to them.
In the end, they moved away.
However, those times pushed Drew to perform. They taught him how to read crowds and keep people looking at him, which turned out to be very useful. Tough love and rules helped them get through their childhood.
It was important to Jim to work at any age, and told them they needed to get jobs right away.
They did the same thing whether they were selling hangers, being clowns, or taking care of the land.
The point was to make people better.
People were told to be creative, but duty came first. Through every task, early morning, and small business try, they gained new strength.
Later, when people asked the twins how they balanced acting, real estate, and TV, they always said it was because of their parents. It was the start of everything good. Drew dreamed of basketball, while Jonathan liked building things and magic tricks.
He worked hard every day until he could jump 43 inches high in high school, practicing 4 to 5 hours a day.
That was the kind of number that made coaches stop and think.
He was picked for the University of Calgary team, but got hurt before he could play a single game. Then, in 2003, when he was 25, he got an offer from another college. It was exciting at first, but he soon noticed that the trainees around him were younger and moving faster. Moving away from the game, he felt the pain of leaving a dream behind. It hurt at the time, but it pushed him in a new direction. On the other side of that choice was real estate, even though he didn't see it clearly at the time. The twins bought their first home when they were 18 and about to start college. Drew and Jonathan found a fixer-upper for $200,000 with a seller take-back mortgage that only needed a $250 down payment.
Most students would have had trouble making rent.
They fixed it up, rented out rooms for $800 each, lived there for free, and then sold it a year later for $50,000 more than they paid for it. It felt risky and exciting to do what we did. That flip put them in a world that would later shape who they are.
They kept going and flipped dozens of homes over the next 15 years.
Each wall and choice gave them more experience. Drew kept working extra jobs to make ends meet. Worked as a flight attendant, personal trainer, and website creator. Security guards at malls, busboys, and even the boss of a bikini shop. Over the years, he had a lot of jobs that taught him about people and stress. Stability felt very far away, even with all that work.
He needed more power, especially since real estate agents kept making bad deals that cost them money.
In 2004, Drew had enough. He had lost thousands of dollars because his lawyers were not good enough. They earned a lot of money, so he got a license to protect it.
Since both boys had licenses, they took care of everything on their own. Their power began with that choice.
They opened Scott Real Estate, Inc. later that same year. It was a full system all in one place. Drew looked for and arranged homes. Jonathan planned, fixed up, and put them on display. At the same time, they worked on up to 10 improvements in Vancouver, Calgary, and Las Vegas. They became millionaires a long time before they were ever seen on TV.
Drew didn't give up on his playing dreams, though.
He had a few small performing roles early on, but nothing big. He was in Breaker High in 1997 and Smallville in 2001, but most of the time he was just a background figure or an uncredited extra. He had been a clown since he was a child, but nothing gave him the attention he wanted.
Rejection kept coming in.
He tried many times in the late 1990s and early 2000s, but Hollywood would not let him in. He and his brothers started Davidian Production Group in 2002 so that they could make their own movies. Too bad they didn't have enough money, because dealers kept turning them away.
The company only stayed open because real estate paid the bills.
They switched to digital and TV by 2010, but the first few years were a constant battle. By 2006, Drew was tired of everything. He went to Vancouver with the goal of becoming an actor full-time for a year. He went to a friend's house to sleep and shot auditions in his car.
He worked hard until he was completely worn out. He gave up because he kept getting turned down. He finally understood that just acting wasn't enough. His skills and experience had to fit together in a way that seemed normal. When the brothers pitched their show idea, that mix came together. At first, HGTV loved how good Jonathan was at building things, but they barely paid attention to Drew. They even talked about making Jonathan the main character of the show. Drew felt hurt that he had been forgotten again. He had been wanting to be in front of the camera for years and was afraid he would miss his chance. He fought for his spot and shown them that both brothers were important to the show. What happened after that fight was important. It was a big step into the unknown when I signed the HGTV deal.
They already had a business that did well. TV was a risk with no way to protect yourself.
They didn't get paid much.
It was a heavy promise. If the show didn't do well, they would waste time that they could have used to flip homes.
But they believed in the idea. Property Brothers first aired in 2011.
As soon as the show started, they finally knew what all their hard work had been meant for. The show's star, Drew Scott, changed everything in 2011, it seemed like overnight. At first, not many people watched the show, but as soon as the first scenes came out, more than 1.5 million people watched every week. Families saw him persuade landlords who were afraid to take risks on houses that didn't look like they would work out. It looked easy from his smile, but there was more to it than that. He had been in real estate for 15 years and had done so many deals that negotiating was like breathing to him. That's why the cams only caught things that he had been living for years. The first shows were shot in Vancouver, where the beat was very fast. In just 2 years, the brand had grown to include goods, spin-offs, and news stories across the country. Then came the awards. People in places other than Canada started to know their names, and Drew felt like the wave was pushing his life in ways he hadn't planned. That success was based on a real thing. Jonathan and Drew ran Scott Real Estate, Inc. before anyone knew about the show. They had been working with real clients since 2004 and selling homes on a budget before anyone put a camera on them. You may have noticed that the brothers were renovating their homes in just 3 weeks at a time when they were on TV. They filmed in 5 homes over the course of 4 months for the first season. Even when the days were 16 hours long, they sometimes felt too short. Many homeowners came with both dreams and fears.
Budgets ran out. Nothing was what it seemed on the walls.
The crew had to quickly switch between used sets and new locations just to stay on schedule.
Drew was in the middle of everything.
He went from being the host to negotiating to making decisions so often that the different roles became one. As the show went on, new ideas kept coming up.
By 2013, people were buying and selling things.
Brother vs. Brother and Forever Home came out soon after. As of 2019, the show had more than 14 seasons and a number of spin-offs.
Drew could feel the pull of a brand that was growing bigger than the show that started it.
They started Scott Living in 2015 and hoped for steady progress. Instead, the line made $100 million in 2 years and planned to double that amount by 2017.
They put out books.
They agreed to license each other. Their ideas were used to make furniture, kitchenware, and collections for the whole house. Because the brand had his name and promise on it, Drew went into boardrooms and helped make every deal.
He took a turn behind the camera too. He felt like Scott Brothers Entertainment was his second home.
A place where he switched between being a creator and a boss. More than 20 original shows, digital projects, and branded films for HGTV, Netflix, and Amazon had been made by the company by 2024. Drew looked over budgets, met with creative teams, and formed relationships with businesses that wanted to use the Property Brothers magic. Some days he filmed in one place, flew out that same night for a meeting, and then came back the next morning to work on the film. During some months, he drove more than 20,000 miles and still looked like nothing was going on behind the scenes. But the pace started to hurt him. Years of shooting, traveling, and constant stress caught up with him in ways he didn't expect. In 2025, he was so tired that not even sleep could make him feel better. His body hurt. He felt dizzy from the heat from the studio lights. He could barely stand for long on some days because his legs hurt. Later, doctors told him that he might have been poisoned by mercury and was also suffering from chronic fatigue syndrome. 4 months, the symptoms had been getting worse in the background, hidden by smiles and planned events.
Fans only saw short talks and brief breaks.
They didn't see the days when he could hardly move. Or the times he wasn't sure if he could keep going.
People were shocked when he finally talked about it.
It was clear that the cost of victory was high. Something softer had been changing his life for a long time, before he became famous and his business grew. She met Drew Fan at Toronto Fashion Week in 2010. There was music and bright lights in the room. But her silly costume as the fashion police, giving fake tickets to people who wore clothes that didn't look right, made her stand out.
Drew laughed. She laughed.
Soon, they went outside to get sushi, then hot chocolate, and finally singing until dawn.
On that first date, we didn't talk about TV or home improvements. 2 people were singing, joking, and getting to know each other's beat.
After a while, Drew said he believed in love.
At first sight.
But what stuck with him was how warm Linda was and how steady her smile was. Their bond grew slowly at first, and then all at once. Their lives came together even more when she got a job as creative head at Scott Brothers Entertainment. After a few years, on May 12, 2018, they got married in Italy.
The hills in Puglia looked soft in the sun. As more than 300 people showed up.
Even though the event seemed like a dream, the days leading up to it were anything but calm. They only had 3 months to make plans. Vendors had to make choices. Families required help. Drew had to practice his complicated first dance with Emma Slater, who was his partner on Dancing with the Stars. An artist named Vincenzo helped them, whose mixed Scottish and Vietnamese background showed in the flowers they chose. The fact that the whole party was filmed for a TLC show added to the stress. They held hands and told each other why the chaos was important in the middle of it all. It really did look like a fairy tale when the day finally came. They had let people into their home a year before that. At home, Property Brothers watched as they fixed up a $2.3 million English-style house from 1921 in Hancock Park. There were limits on the old house, tricky basement work, and a family reunion coming up soon, so it was a 12-week sprint. Drew pushed through design choices and problems that came up out of the blue. Linda added glam from old Hollywood and comfort from Art Deco. As they juggled meetings, filming dates, and wedding plans, the cameras kept rolling. Fans got to see how well they worked together on the show. It was messy and tiring behind the scenes, but it showed how much they relied on each other. Things kept getting better in life. Linda often talked about how hard it was for her to balance work and home life. She was in charge of creative projects while getting ready to become a mom. Drew fought health problems while being there for her. It felt like a surprise when they had their son Parker James in May 2022. They had tried for 2 years, going through IVF and IUI treatments, which brought them both hope and sadness. When Parker showed up on their 4th wedding anniversary, everything seemed better. In May 2024, their daughter Piper Ray joined the family, making it 3. Linda had a hard time with her second baby. She had to deal with pain and swelling and put a lot of weight on Drew. He stopped traveling and slowed down shooting to take care of her. The noise level in their home changed all at once. Diapers, laughing, and long nights filled the air. Drew often made fun of the idea that Parker would one day take over the family business from Jonathan. Even though everything else was still moving quickly, these two little lives slowed down. Then they were sued, which hurt their reputation. Mindy and Paul King, who are newlyweds from Las Vegas, were in an episode called Gambles and Jackpots in 2019. Their whole house was fixed up by the show's crew for almost $200,000. After making the movie, they said their house was full of troubles. They said they were worried about the electrical wires, doors that wouldn't close properly, appliances that were scratched by loose grout, and a total of almost 90 other problems. They went to court in 2021 and sued Cineflix and Villa Construction. The Nevada State Contractors Board looked over the claims and found 10 problems. They estimated that the fixes would cost $94,772. The Kings said they felt ignored and that no one talked to them after shooting was over. In spite of not being named in the suit, Drew and Jonathan were still linked to the issues by the public. The names were repeated in the headlines. Fans were not sure if the show lived up to its promises. The story got around the web. People who hadn't seen the show started calling it a fight between a normal family and a huge TV machine. They felt tricked and left behind, the Kings said. They showed pictures of cabinets that were leaning, paint that was coming off, and wires that were sticking out. People there said it cost more to fix things after the cameras left. Others who had been on home improvement shows were moved to share their own issues after hearing theirs. Places where people post stories. Some articles asked how reality TV handled quality control. The Kings were seen as a sign of something bigger, and the brothers' reputations were hurt for a long time. They weren't directly responsible, but their words and faces were all over the show. People saw the brand ahead of the production business. The pictures were used in every story by the media. Some critics were not sure how reliable the on-screen changes were. Drew and Jonathan put out comments saying they were not responsible for the claims, but the shadow stayed for a while. The whole thing made them remember that success can go both ways. It tests you quickly and lifts you quickly. Drew Scott's health began to get worse in a way that seemed odd to him. Around 2019, fans first noticed that he wasn't as often seen on TV as he used to be. At first, it looked like everyone gets that kind of flu, but the symptoms kept getting worse. He was always so tired that even small jobs were hard for him.
He had a slow and foggy mind.
It hurt his stomach a lot, and the heat made it worse. The days turned into weeks and then months, but his body wasn't getting better.
Instead, it felt like it was getting worse.
He saw a lot of doctors.
That someone would see the bigger picture.
A lot of people looked for inflammatory diseases like lupus.
Some people thought it might be a rare problem with the brain.
There were a lot of loose ends, and the unpredictability scared him. After months of being confused, he finally found out the truth. He was poisoned by mercury and had chronic fatigue syndrome at the same time. It made sense of the tiredness, the fog, and the strange waves of pain and weakness. The source of the mercury is unknown. Something he ate or something around him could have caused it. No matter where it came from, the damage was real, and it hurt him more than he thought. It got worse over time, so he had to slow down.
Slow down even more.
Soon, he stopped shooting Property Brothers and all of his other projects. He didn't work on sets for over a year.
And business trips.
During Drew's time in treatment and rest, Jonathan kept working on a few jobs by himself. He didn't like the sudden quiet in a life that had been loud and busy, but he needed it to heal. On social media, he told his friends about his good and bad days and how hard it was to live with something that no one could see. He also talked about how heavy it is emotionally to have a disease that changes all the time.
Every day. He moved differently when he finally came back in 2020.
He put more thought into the projects he picked. He stayed near his house. Getting better taught him that he can't put his health last, not even for work he loves. He kept using Instagram and YouTube to talk about what was going on during that long period of time. Hearing diagnosis after diagnosis that never quite fit made him mad, he said. He talked about how scary it is when your body changes in ways you can't choose. The most important thing he said was that the emotional stress hurt a lot. I was trying to stay positive, deal with my stress, and believe that things would get better in the end. He often lent on Jonathan and was glad that his brother knew what it meant to be quiet when talking was too hard. His openness brought him thousands of new friends. People saw a weaker side of him and told him their own stories.
For many, he showed that you can face something you can't see and still keep going. Then, in November 2024, something scary took place.
All of a sudden, a bunch of YouTube vids said that Drew Scott had died in an Ontario car accident. One movie called Drew Scott's Moving Tragedy. He told his wife Linda about a fake crash at 3 a.m. on November 19th. It said that he hit a truck, got stuck, passed out, and did not live. To make it look real, the people who made it put a closed casket and women crying. They wrote in a small font at the bottom of the movie that the voices and images had been changed or made up. Still, more than 16,000 people watched the movie, which really scared people. It came from a station that is known for spreading fake news about celebrities' deaths. They even said Jonathan had made a public statement.
It wasn't true at all. There was no formal confirmation of it.
A few days later, Drew shared a picture on Instagram of himself smiling at a Lakers game, which made everything clear right away.
He was still living and well.
Before that, the fake news spread quickly. Fans asked if he was still alive on Facebook, YouTube, and message boards.
Some people believed everything because the pictures looked real and emotional.
News sites like Meow and Sportskeeda quickly said the story wasn't true, and neither Drew's family nor HGTV said anything about a tragedy. A lot of fans were really sad before they found out it was all a set. Drew's posts made people feel better. The lie was thrown out by the fact that he was online.
The fake did leave a mark, though.
Many people saw how simple it was for people who make content online to change the truth into something exciting to get more views. Some even said they mixed fact and fiction in their vids on purpose to get more clicks. They changed sounds, made fake faces, and made up stories that sounded real but weren't at all. The Drew Scott hoax showed how these methods can cause panic, make money off of people's sadness, and slowly make people less likely to believe real news. As the noise died down, Drew's life began to move in a more peaceful pace. When the first season of Property Brothers ended in 2019, he worked on smaller, more personal tasks. In the same year, Property Brothers Forever Home came out.
Season 1 only had 8 homes, not the usual dozens that are shown each season. The boys were able to get to know families better and learn more about each story because they moved more slowly. In 2015, a house in Richmond was bought for $500,000. It was fixed up and then sold for $989,000. In 2018, the idea had meaning to me. Drew was led to a place at work where it had heart and room to breathe. More work was done behind the scenes by him. In 2021, he was in charge of almost 75 new episodes across 6 projects as co-founder and chief producer of Scott Brothers Entertainment. There were people in more than 160 countries who watched their shows on HGTV and Discovery+. He helped the business grow by adding lifestyle material, digital series, and documentaries. He didn't always show up on TV. He worked on development in the background for many days, guiding ideas and creating projects. Drew and Jonathan built a strong business profile in addition to their work on TV. Scott Living, their line of home goods, came out in 2015. The furniture they sold on QVC for outdoors made them more than $100 million by the end of 2016. They made Dream Homes, a section for high-end design and custom builds that cost a lot of money. Dream Home was their first book. It came out in April 2016 and went straight to number 9 on the New York Times list. The book about their lives, It Takes Two, came out in September 2017. They worked with Target to improve school libraries and with other big stores to make exclusive lines of products. These businesses gave Drew a break from shooting all the time without taking away from his success. Drew kept giving back to the community while this grew. For many years, he and Jonathan helped Habitat for Humanity. They were named Habitat Humanitarians in 2017, which is the highest award the group can give. In April 2018, they helped build walls around new homes in Nashville and gave money to St. Baldrick's Foundation projects that focused on pediatric cancer research. In Haiti, they worked with artists for peace and justice to help build schools and pay for medical care. Thousands of people were affected by their work, and it showed how fame could be used for good. By the end of 2025, Drew was taking an even quieter road. He didn't show up less often because he was getting old. He did it because he wanted to protect his health and the life he was building with his family. He and Linda had IUI and IVF treatments for 2 years before they had their first kid on May 4, 2022, and their second on June 5, 2024. Being a dad changed him. It made him move more slowly. It helped him remember that work can wait because time goes by so fast when kids are young. He cut down on the days he was shooting and kept more days free so he wouldn't miss important dates. It was his long-held desire to be fully present for the family he had been waiting for.